New and important reporting on the Justice Department's case against Donald Trump. CNN is now learning this. Federal investigators had already served a grand jury subpoena back in June at Mar-a-Lago. At that meeting, the FBI took away sensitive national security documents. So then why the unprecedented search warrant this week? Well, CNN has told the FBI developed evidence in part from at least one witness that there were still classified documents stashed at the Palm Beach resort. The Wall Street Journal was first to report the warrant was based on an inside Trump World witness account. Just the News was the first to report evidence of that subpoena. With me to dig deep on this and share their reporting and their insights, CNN's Evan Perez, CNN's Gabby Orr, CNN's Caitlin Polantz, and the former federal prosecutor, Ellie Honig. All right, let's go around the table here and bring important new reporting to light. What is the most significant thing is the search warrant. Everyone said, why would you do something unprecedented? So they served a subpoena, thought they got the documents, and then realized they didn't have them all?
Right, and what this tells us, John, is that these interactions between the Trump lawyers and the prosecutors turned confrontational much earlier than we really realized here, and so we know that before this meeting in June, that there was a subpoena, a grand jury subpoena that was served that led to the June meeting, at which point prosecutors and investigators were able to leave Mar-a-Lago with classified information, documents that were being held there. Now, subsequent to that, we know that there was another subpoena that was served to get surveillance tapes from Mar-a-Lago. It's a separate matter. We also know that at least part of the reason why things turned out the way they did was that the FBI developed information from at least one witness, and in addition to other evidence, that led them to believe that there was additional documents that were still being stored in Mar-a-Lago, in addition to the 15 boxes that had already been taken away earlier this year, retrieved as part of the National Archives effort to get these documents back. These are property of the U.S. government and had no business being at Mar-a-Lago, according to the Justice Department, according to the National Archives. Again, it gives us a sense that things started falling apart between the two sides much earlier than we really realized.
So a subpoena in June, then a search warrant in August, at least one witness inside. This has to, number one, rattle the former president, that somebody inside is talking. What do we know about the conversations with Trump staffers, others at Mar-a-Lago, during this process?
Well, let me fill in what was happening from January when those 15 boxes were picked up by, when archives officials sent folks to pick up those boxes to that June meeting with Trump and his attorneys. What we know, what we've just learned, is that there were multiple aides to the former president who were on staff at Mar-a-Lago or who were involved in transferring these boxes of documents from the White House at the end of Trump's presidency to Mar-a-Lago, which is now his primary residence, who have been interviewed by federal investigators. We do not know what was said in those interviews. We don't know what types of questions were asked or what federal investigators were trying to learn when they spoke to these staff members for Donald Trump. But we do know that those interviews happened. And this, of course, speaks to the fact that federal investigators were looking for more information about exactly what was at Mar-a-Lago, what was in those boxes, and how familiar these aides may have been with, the security protocol around those boxes and the information itself.
And so do we know the answer to the question of exactly what this is about, in the sense that took some documents in June, the FBI came to believe it had been lied to or misled, and there were still documents. So then you take the dramatic step for a search warrant. Was that a statement saying we're getting every last document back, or was that a statement, we think there are bigger crimes at play here?
It's totally possible. It could be either. But we just, as you're looking at this now with this new reporting, it's basically showing us that it didn't come out of nowhere when they did this search. When you talk to legal defense experts, defense lawyers especially, they don't ever talk about what crimes were committed. They talk about what legal exposure someone might have. What are the concerns that someone might have? And the question here, the biggest question, is we just don't know what's written on that search warrant as those statutes that could be criminally investigated right now. Is it just about mishandling of classified records? Is it about other things too? Is there the possibility that the FBI could be concerned about a false statement or being misled? We were hearing earlier that there was concern of being misled. And so without being able to see what's written down there, what was shown to the court, we really just don't know the full scope of this. And still at this time, the Justice Department isn't saying anything. The people who could say something is the Trump team, if that was written in there, or the court could be able to release the documents here.
And so, Ellie Holding, I'm blessed to have three great reporters at the table. I'm going around asking them questions as a reporter, questioning reporters. As a former prosecutor, put your prosecutor hat on. When you hear this new information, what does it tell you?
Well, John, it's such important context because it tells us that from DOJ's perspective, they tried it the easy way first, and when that didn't work, then they went to the hard way. And here's what I mean. The fact that there was a subpoena first is crucial. That's the easy way. A subpoena is just a single piece of paper that says you are hereby commanded to hand over these items. Apparently, there were some documents handed over as a result of those subpoena, but then DOJ apparently realized, well, wait a second, they haven't given us everything, and some of the things they haven't given us are national security sensitive. And that could explain why DOJ then said, okay, now we have to do it the hard way. Now we have to send in agents. We're going to get a search warrant, and we're going to seize those documents.
And so this raises giant sensitivities for everybody involved. So let's start with the former president of the United States. This in Rolling Stone. A source close to Trump describes it to Rolling Stone. He has asked me and others, do you think our phones are tapped? Given the sheer volume of investigations going on into the former president, I do not think he's assuming anything is outside the realm of possibility. You report on Trump World all the time. How rattled are they that apparently they thought, if they thought they had answered the FBI's concerns when the subpoena was served, and then the FBI agents come back and say, no, we think you still have more, how rattled are they?
Well, publicly, we know that they're saying that they were totally caught off guard. They claim to have been very cooperative over the course of these conversations between federal investigators and Trump's attorneys. I want to read you just quickly part of a statement that Donald Trump's spokesperson, Taylor Budowich, gave me today when I asked him about this subpoena that we just learned about. He said, Monday's unprecedented raid was absolutely unnecessary. This continues to be part of the most egregious action of hostility by the Biden administration, whose Justice Department has been weaponized to harass President Trump, his supporters, and his staff. So that is their posture. Privately, we know that Donald Trump has already had conversations. He's been briefed by his attorneys about the other investigations that he's facing. So he is aware of the legal jeopardy that he's potentially in. And I would imagine that this would only add to that paranoia that's sort of playing out behind the scenes.
In the political conversation, Trump has the floor to himself at the moment, and Trump spokesmen like that, and they're stoking the base, saying this is a weaponization of the Justice Department. We were cooperating. You have some reporting on it. There are some concerns inside the Justice Department. Some, should we say more?
Yeah, no, they are. There's a lot of, I think, debate inside the department about what should they say, because obviously they tend to not speak about ongoing investigations. Those are the rules. You do have an unusual situation here, especially because, again, they're trying to portray that they're being cooperative, but what we are learning is that this has not been so cooperative for a lot longer than we realize. And so if you want to correct the record, if you also want to push back on these claims that Trump is making that the FBI planted evidence, and really the threats that are now coming as a result of some of the stance that Republican politicians are making, I think that's where you see pressure coming from inside, saying that the Attorney General should stand up and explain a little bit, again, not giving away the whole store, but explain a little bit about what is going on here to reassure the public that they are doing everything according to the law.
Right. Garland has memories, of course. He was not there, but he remembers what happened when Trump was president, James Comey and all of that. How much does that factor into, if we're going to say anything, we better say it once and then not change it down the road and get it, if you're going to do it, get it right?
Well, Garland isn't the FBI director. That is also Chris Wray, I'm sure, is looking at the Comey past there and making sure that they're not going to be making announcements. But Garland, remember, is a former federal judge. Judges do not speak publicly when they're sitting on the bench. I mean, occasionally they do. Sometimes they'll write a book. Sometimes they'll get a speech about legality. But you just don't see them coming out unless there is a very specific time and place for them to do so. In the course of the Justice Department, it's an indictment.